My son was my miracle child. We have missed out on moments that nothing in the world could ever replace. For sure, we've been wronged. Nobody can give us this back. I've been wrongfully accused of hurting my son. I need somebody to listen. I need answers.
Marty says she needs answers after detectives handcuffed her and dragged her off to jail for allegedly breaking her 16-week-old son's ribs and biting his shoulders. Now, her fiancé Derek says he felt completely helpless after he was also accused and could not save Marty or their son.
Marty and I are innocent. We never did anything to hurt our son. When our son was 4 months old, she could feel a popping every time he would breathe in and out. When I slightly touched him, he just started to cry. We just headed straight to the emergency room. CPS came into the room. A cop and a detective were questioning for hours. He was telling me he can tell I'm not a bad person, but I need to come clean about what happened.
We found bite marks on the shoulder right here.
I'm being completely very honest with you. I have done nothing.
Once the social worker told us that this is child abuse, Marty and I just broke down in tears. I couldn't fathom what was going on. I was still in shock that our son had these injuries and we knew nothing about it. I'm angry. I don't know what type of monster they think I am.
Well, joining us via Polycom now is Derek. Derek, I really appreciate you joining us here. And how long were you interrogated at the hospital?
I was interrogated for about an hour.
And they kept you separate, correct?
Yes, sir. They called me back there to where the nurse was holding my son, and the detective told me to hold your son one more time because you're never going to see him again.
As this has unfolded across time, you've learned that there are some things here that put this in a very different light. And there's a letter from the hospital, September 15, 2014, that says, first off, Marty suffers from Ehlers-Danlos hypermobility syndrome. And we'll talk about that in a second. It is likely the infant also has Ehlers-Danlos hypermobility syndrome. Being vitamin D deficient at 4 months, being totally breastfed, and had undetected infantile rickets. Likely means he was vitamin D deficient at birth. The combination of infantile rickets and Ehlers-Danlos hypermobility syndrome can markedly increase bone fragility. So what you're saying then is that there were conditions, one that you have, and there is a genetic component to this, that it can be passed on, and that he was also suffering from infantile rickets. And these fractures of ribs, for example, could have been during the birth process, could be from picking the child up, could be from any number of things.
It could be. And I kept telling them that over and over.
Now, I said there was a question that has to be dealt with here. When your son was taken from you, from that point forward, did he continue to have injuries?
They did stop. Initially, when he was taken, he was in the hospital for 3 days. At that point, his ribs were fractured, so they were handling him more carefully. They also put him on formula. Formula is vitamin D fortified. With the careful handling and him getting what he needed for his bones, it stopped. It's basically self-healing once you administer what needs to be had.
You understand my point? Because we're saying, okay, you say he's with you and he is sustaining injuries.
Absolutely.
There's no question about that.
No.
Well, but he had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and infantile rickets.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but then we cross this line, he's no longer exposed to you. He still has the same syndrome, still has infantile rickets, but all of a sudden the injuries stop. What's the variable that's been changed? You. Now in isolation, that looks bad.
It does.
We're going to find out what's going on here. I mean, has CPS and law enforcement really run amok here and broken this family apart? Or is there some basis for this? We're going to unravel all of this after the break.
I've been under house arrest for 6 months. This is the ankle monitor that I have to wear. We both used all of our money out of our savings to bail her out of jail. Our bank accounts were empty, so I did take money from my job, $38,000. After I did that, I spoke with my supervisors and I returned all of the money. But when your back is against the wall, desperate times call for desperate measures.
Derek says he was desperate to save his family after his fiancée Marty was accused of breaking their 16-week-old son's ribs and collarbones, scapula, arrested, put behind bars on a $400,000 bond. She said, I'll take every polygraph you've got. You can take imprints of my teeth, match them to the baby. They ever take imprints of your
They
teeth?
said they did not have anybody that could do them.
Yeah. If you look at the nurse's notes and the medical reports, those are crossed out, but that was never corrected. So the question becomes, first off, can this disease, these two things, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and infantile rickets, can these diseases account for these injuries? Well, EDS, genetics and pediatrics expert, Dr. J. Patrick Whelan, says clues on Marty's son's x-rays were missed that were suggestive of metabolic bone disease. He also says there's no doubt that Marty is a victim of Ehlers-Danlos syndrome and passed the genetic disorder to her son. So, Dr. Whelan, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate this. I guess the question that we have, bottom line, was this missed when they went to the hospital, and is that why this abuse allegation was made?
Absolutely. This is not an uncommon thing that happens in the emergency room. They're looking for common things. They're not looking for the rare things. And they're numbed to the presence of common problems. And so I think it's not surprising that a radiologist glancing at this film, seeing multiple broken ribs, jumps to the conclusion that this must be child abuse.
And you say he was also born with rickets.
So rickets is a problem with the strength of our bones. It's a problem where, for one reason or another, the bone mineral density is decreased below what it should be.
And you say they also missed some telltale signs of flared ribs.
You know, perhaps I should defer to my radiology colleague sitting next to me here.
Let me introduce radiologist Dr. David to you. Tell us what you've seen in looking at this and what it means in interpreting what's happened in this case.
There was a clue in what a radiologist should have read that would have automatically, in my opinion, completely excluded the mother as a suspect if there was abuse. Even before you were judging whether there was abusive fractures or metabolic bone disease related fractures, is the mother brought the baby in with clicking or popping in the ribs, a non-life-threatening disease. Okay, why would a mother abuse a child and bring that child under light of multiple healthcare providers who would almost certainly catch her from this abusive act? This is an act of insanity. And if this is the mindset of this mother, there would be easy to find this in her background, that she was doing crazy things. And this is not the action of a guilty person. So that would be the first person I would cross off my list. And unless you are trained carefully to look at the subtle signs of rickets on x-rays, you will never see them. They're not teaching doctors that anymore. So she had, the baby's x-rays showed enough signs, although relatively mild compared to the other cases I see. There were clear-cut signs at the 2-month x-ray of rachitic rosary, which is enlargement of the front of the ribs. There were changes in the wrists and changes in some of the long bones of rickets.
Orthopedic surgeon Dr. Doug Benson says the diagnosis of child abuse is unsupportable. Dr. Benson has joined us on the phone and has been involved in the case for some time as well. Dr. Benson, are you there?
I'm here. Right at the beginning, you talked about the fact that this woman had 9 9 pregnancies in 11 years. The mother's body leaches out minerals to make her baby. And when she has one pregnancy after another, she never really has an opportunity to fully recover. And it's been known for 100 years that vitamin D deficiency is associated with fractures in infants and small children.
This has got to be music to your ears,
It is.
Marty and Derek. I can't thank you all enough for shedding light on this. We've got to take a break. We reached out to the police department, CPS, and the DA's office. We're going to hear what they have to say about this right after the break.
Dr. Phil, I've known Marty a little over 10 years now. She is awesome with kids. She has been around my children. She's been around my foster children. There is no way that she abused her son.
I've known Marty 16 years. She's taken care of my daughter since she was born. I know there has to be another explanation for what happened because I know she wouldn't hurt her son.
Marty is one of the most kind, respectful, and gentle people I know, especially with children. When detective said that mark was a bite mark, I saw that with my own eyes. That was a scratch mark. She would never hurt her child or anyone else's child.
Well, those are Marty's friends who say she's not the bone-breaking biter mom that the media has portrayed her to be, and would never commit such a heinous crime of reportedly breaking several of her then 16-week-old son's ribs. We reached out to the different agencies involved in this. We reached out to CPS, Child Protective Services. They said, quote, "We do not comment on CPS cases, whether open or closed." We got a statement from the district attorney. Quote, "It would be inappropriate for me to comment on a pending criminal matter. As I understand, the case now is slated to go to trial, so I couldn't comment about the specifics or about the case while it is in a pending status." We reached out to Wake County Police Department, and they declined to comment. And in the meantime, your baby's gone.
He's gone, and we're missing everything. He called somebody else mama and dada. They didn't bring him into this world. We brought him into this world. We were delighted to be parents. Like, we were so ecstatic. And we've been robbed. We have been robbed.
Well, I've brought somebody here to talk about this. Attorney and child advocate Ariva Martin has been sitting here listening to this so far. And Ariva, let me think how to put this. What the hell is going on?
The system has just run amok on this case, Dr. Phillip. The district attorney, the CPS, the family, these experts should all be talking because they all should have the best interest of this child as the primary focus and getting this child returned to the parents if they're not abusers. They should not be in separate corners. They should be together working to get this child home.
As I understand it, Derek does not have visitation. He's not even been charged with anything. Explain that to me.
The reality is, sometimes these systems overreach. There is no justification based on the facts that we know that we're sitting here, that's before us, that would support Derek not having custody. And I wish that the family had some resources. There's some pro bono services, some clinics that are available, some free lawyers that will go into court and help Derek get his son. Derek hasn't been charged with any child abuse. There's no reason that Derek should not have custody of his son.
Will you help us coordinate those resources for
I'm going to
them?
help Derek. I'm going to help the mom. I'd love to help you all.
Marty and Derek say they both want to know how to clear Marty's name and get their son back. We'll be right back. We have leading experts here in relevant science to what has happened here. In these three wonderful experts here that have weighed in on this. You've got a history, and I can tell you from a forensic psychological standpoint, in putting this history together, you look at custody in terms of whether someone is a fit parent or not. You look for stability financially, environmentally, spiritually, emotionally, all the things that are very evident in this situation. There's just absolutely no reason to not unify this family. And the one thing that I want to say to everybody at home, and I always worry so much about the pendulum swinging too far in the other direction. I would hate, really, really hate, as a product of this conversation, for a young mother or a young father to fail to take their child to healthcare providers in an emergency situation because you fear that you might get there and something like this might happen. Fortunately, this is the exception. It is not the rule. And I would hate for something terrible to happen to a young child because you were afraid to go to the hospital. You were afraid to go to your doctor. And hopefully you have a caregiver that you can pick up the phone and call, a pediatrician that you know that if you do get to the emergency room and there's a question, and they can call your pediatrician that can vouch for you, that can talk for you. But please don't fail to get your child necessary medical care if you're in a bind. Special thanks to attorney and child advocate Areva Martin, EDS genetics and pediatrics expert Dr. J. Patrick Whelan, radiologist Dr. David Ayub, and orthopedic surgeon Dr. Doug Benson. Thank you three gentlemen for your help today as well. I hope you're glad that you came here today.
I'm so thankful.
All right.
I really am.
Dr. Phil Show, viewers.